Okay, boys and girls, today's learning goal says, I can compare and contrast weathering and erosion. We've learned a lot over the last 3 weeks about fast changes and slow changes, how they're connected, and what they actually are. So by now, we should know a lot about erosion and weathering. Before we begin, I want you to talk with your partner about what you already know about weathering and what you already know about erosion. Once you're done, hit play. Now, when we compare and contrast, you think about what is the same and what is different. When we compare things, we ask ourselves, what's similar about these two things? What is alike? And when we contrast things, we ask ourselves, what is different? What's not the same? So we have something really easy here. We're going to compare dogs and cats because that's something that everyone is familiar with. And so something that's specific just to dogs, we're going to contrast first. How are dogs and cats different? Well, dogs bark, however, cats meow. Dogs chase cats, cats chase mice. Dogs like to play and cats like to sleep. Dogs need to be given a bath to get clean, while cats can lick themselves clean. So those are the differences. What are some similarities, or how are they both alike? Well, both cats and dogs are a type of pet, and they both have fur. So those are two ways that they're alike. When you're reading and you're trying to compare and contrast, it's often helpful to look for key words within the text that you're reading. So if we see key words like both and like and to and also, those keywords usually signal your brain to know that, oh, they're comparing the two topics right now. They're trying to tell us how they're alike. And then when we see keywords like but or however, and there's other words like whereas or unlike, that signals our brain that they're going to tell us how they're different. So we're going to get ready to read a little bit about weathering and erosion, and our task is going to be to compare and contrast them. Here we go. Now, how are weathering and erosion alike? Before we begin, I want you and your partner to think about what you already know and see if you can come up with one way that weathering and erosion are alike. What do they have in common? What's similar about them? Hit play when you have an answer. Okay, how are weathering and erosion alike? Take it slow. Some changes to Earth are slow. Slow changes happen over many months or years. Weathering is a slow change. Weathering happens when wind and water break down rock into smaller pieces. Erosion is also a slow change. Erosion happens when wind and water move rocks and soil. It changes the shape of land. Now over here we have an organizer that we're going to work with to help us compare and contrast. And for this slide, we're going to focus on the top of our organizer, which says similarities. And the two topics we're comparing are weathering and erosion. And we're going to find some ways that they're alike, and that information is going to go right in this box here where it says similar information. Now, after I just read the piece of text to you, can you and your partner go into the text and find how weathering and erosion are alike? What's similar? Hit play when you're ready to check your work. Okay, let's see how you did. This is what I said about how they're alike. Let's see if you agreed. I found that weathering is a slow change and erosion is also a slow change. Did you and your partner say that? I hope so. Good job if you did. I also found another way that they're similar. They both use wind and water. Did you say that as well? If you did, you're a rock star. So now I'm going to place that in my organizer. Both are a slow change that came right from the text where I underlined it, and they both use wind and water. So those are two ways that weathering and erosion are alike. Now we're going to move to how are weathering and erosion different. I still have my same organizer. I kept how they're the same or similar. Now I'm going to read it again with a different purpose. I want you and your partner listening to see how are weathering and erosion different. Take it slow. Some changes to Earth are slow. Slow changes happen over many months or years. Weathering is a slow change. Weathering happens when wind and water break down rock into smaller pieces. Erosion is also a slow change. Erosion happens when wind and water move rocks and soil. It changes the shape of land. Now, talk with your partner on how you think weathering and erosion are different. Hit play when you're ready to check your work. Okay, I hope you and your partner found the evidence that I did. Let's see if we match. I found that weathering breaks down rock into smaller pieces. And I also found that erosion moves rock and soil. So weathering breaks down the rock into those smaller pieces, which allows erosion to then move the rock and soil. So if we go to our organizer over here, for weathering, a difference that I found was that the wind and water break down the rock into smaller pieces. It breaks it up. Whereas erosion uses wind and water to move the rocks and soil to somewhere new. And as you can see in this picture, erosion wears away the cliff and moved that sand to a different spot. So there you have it, boys and girls. This is how we compare and contrast two topics. We make sure that we go into the text and find our evidence to show how they're alike and how they're different.